Palantir got a record target price. It was included in S&P 500. We have new information about the customer retention rate and insane loyalty of the customers to Palantir. And in general, we have a lot to talk about because there are a lot of news related to Palantir. Today, we're going to cover or try to cover all of that, so stay tuned. Before we begin, I would like to really thank you guys for supporting this channel, liking our videos, subscribing to our channel. It really helps us grow, and thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you. At the beginning, let's cover all of our bases. So what does Palantir actually do? So Palantir is a data analytics company. It works with other businesses, gathers a lot of data about these businesses, and makes some kind of analysis or provides some kind of decision for these businesses on what to do next. And we're talking about some complex operation. Not to be so vague and to actually give you some example, let's take a look at the contract which Palantir has signed with BP. BP, British Petroleum, huge company. They were a customer of Palantir since 2016, I think, and recently they have signed a new 5-year deal. So what Palantir does for BP is, for example, the oil rigs maintenance. So if oil rig breaks, it halts all of the production, and this is quite expensive for the company, and it takes some time to repair that. On the other hand, maintenance of these oil rigs is also quite expensive. So you need to find kind of the middle ground to understand when this oil rig needs to be repaired. And Palantir gathers a lot of data and knows when the maintenance should be done. Another good example is supply chain optimization. So think about that. You have like hundreds of oil rigs all over the world, and you have oil refineries, and you have silos to store everything that comes out of the refinery, and you have gas stations. Now you need to make sure that everything kind of plays together. All of your tankers are available, you have gas in all of your gas stations, etc., etc. This is what Palantir does. It kind of optimizes the whole supply chain, which allows for more cost-effective production, for example, and for more efficient business operation. And out of that, you can already see the implication of Palantir on, for example, other businesses. Let's take Walmart, all the, again, chain supply management, inventory management. Let's take some car manufacturing, for example, like Toyota or, for example, Tesla. You need to know on which factory to produce which vehicles, and you kind of need to know that the materials are there. All of these complex business optimization can be done with Palantir. Now that we know what Palantir does, let's talk about Palantir stock. And Palantir stock is all of the hype right now. This is the most talked about stock. If you don't believe me that Palantir stock is kind of overhyped, let's take a look at the recent inclusion into S&P 500. So usually when company gets included into major index like S&P 500, its stock rises quite significantly because a lot of fund managers now need to buy this stock. Palantir wasn't the only company that was included right now into S&P 500. Together with Palantir, Dell and some company which is called Erie Indemnity, never heard of them, but they were included into S&P 500 as well. So on the news, Dell rose about 3.8%. Erie Indemnity for some reason dropped 0.6%. Palantir rose by 14%. And before you come and say that this was some kind of a short squeeze, it wasn't, because Palantir's short float is only about 3%. So no short squeeze, just Palantir stock is overly reacting to positive news and overly reacting to negative news. So the amplitude of the jump is much higher. Now let's try to understand if all of this is hype, smoke and mirrors, or is there a real value behind this company? And one very interesting metric that I found and I haven't really looked at is something called yearly dollar retention ratio. So what this is actually the amount of dollars from old customers which will come to your company next year. So you have a bunch of customers this year, they are paying you, for example, $100 million. How much these same customers will pay you next year? If I remember correctly, don't quote me on that, the 75-80% ratio supposed to be pretty good and pretty impressive. For Palantir, it's 140%. Even if Palantir doesn't sign any new customers at all, their revenue will grow about 14% year over year. And this is because Palantir software is highly customizable and it can be customized for each business needs. Because of that, it's very hard to switch from Palantir software to any other company. This is called stickiness of business. So Palantir's business is really sticky. By the way, Palantir attracts new customers with something called AAP bootcamps. Julia, in her previous video about Palantir, talked about this a lot. Just to kind of recap what bootcamps are, it's just a workshop where Palantir engineers and salespeople come to this workshop and they kind of configure the system for your business and show you what Palantir can bring to you. Think of it as kind of a test drive for your business. So they're giving you a test drive in a really luxury car. It's understandable that this is a much easier way to sell you the car, to kind of give you a taste of what it can bring to your business. Now let's talk about numbers. And what's really interesting about Palantir, we are used to companies growing bigger and their numbers kind of deteriorating, because $1 trillion company cannot grow as fast as, for example, $10 billion company. For Palantir, it's quite the opposite. So over the last 3 years, on average, Palantir grew about 23.1%. This year, it will grow 24%. Their net income in Q2 2023 was $28 million. In Q2 2024, it was $134 million. So growth of about 4 times, 5 times. Actually, its gross margin grew over the last 6 years from 72% to 81.4%, which kind of shows you how much competitive advantage and pricing power the company has. It's not all rainbows and unicorns and everything is fine with Palantir. There are a couple of things which I personally don't really like about this company, and one big issue with Palantir is their stock-based compensation. So Palantir pays a lot in stock to their employees, management, and founders. Over the last 12 months, Palantir paid to its employees about $514 million. And this is a significant part of their free cash flow. So over the last 12 months, their free cash flow was around $700 million, $694 million to be exact. So this is a pretty significant chunk of free cash flow. Some investors think that stock-based compensation are not a real expense because it's not really money floating out of the company. But most of the value investors actually think of it as taking money from shareholders and giving them to employees. How you kind of think about that and how you deal with that, it's of course your opinion. One thing I have to say, that stock-based compensation as a proportion of free cash flow, it's decreasing pretty dramatically over time. So in 2021, it was around 242% of the free cash flow. Right now, it's about 74%. So the proportion is decreasing over time. It's still a significant number. Now let's talk about what future holds for Palantir. Recently, there were pretty exciting news that Bank of America analyst with very unfortunate name of Ronald Epstein has upgraded Palantir from $30 per share target price to 50. And this is a record because if I recall correctly, Wedbush's Dan Ives, the overly optimistic all the time Dan Ives, had the record number of $38 per share. So now we have 50. What was interesting is how Ronald Epstein gave the whole explanation for why Palantir deserves to cost $50 per share. I will not read what he wrote in his report, but the essence of it was that in 1980, AT&T hired a bunch of analysts to kind of estimate what the cell phone market will be by the year 2000. And the estimation, given the kind of linear progression of cell phone market, was that there will be around 900,000 cell phones in the world. The real number was about 100 million. Why? Because people didn't think about videos and internet and apps and music and all of these things which were not really associated with a phone. And this is the way this analyst thinks about Palantir, that the more companies are using Palantir software, the more different application they will find on how to use this analytical data. One more interesting quote, by the way, that got me thinking, because we are following Palantir since pretty much its IPO. We are investors in Palantir. So this is a stock and the company which we know a lot about. So one interesting thing which we kind of missed, and I read it yesterday and kind of got me thinking. Alex Carr, Palantir CEO, said in the conference call after Q1 that Palantir right now is the only company which learned how to monetize AI. You probably read all these articles about AI is great, AI is good, how do we monetize it? Because a lot of money is invested in it and we don't kind of see a lot of things coming out of this investment. So he said that what all of the companies are doing when they're saying that they're monetizing AI is actually creating various chatbots. We talked about CrowdStrike, for example, with I think Charlotte AI, it was called their product. So this is kind of a chatbot which allows you to configure the system properly. Recently, we have seen that on the booking.com, for example, you have a chatbot which can allow you to plan your vacation. This is kind of where the application ends. We still didn't see a lot of examples where businesses create something AI-based which helps them grow, which helps other businesses grow. And Palantir does exactly that, and they are doing that for 10 years at least. Palantir is pretty enigmatic company. Not a lot of people understand what they actually do. The company itself pretty amazing. Their financials are really good. Their management team is kind of unheard of. You have to pay for this company, and you have to pay a lot. Their valuation is all over the place. The thing is, if you're interested in Palantir, go watch Julia's video that we did about a week and a half ago, and you will have an answer what makes Palantir so special. The uniqueness of the company. It doesn't really have any competitors. It doesn't really have anyone to kind of compare to in terms of the product, in terms of what it brings to your business. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and thank you for your time. We will see you in the next video. Take care.